Hey everybody, this is WSAV.com now reporter John Dowding. Our background's a little different for this episode of All Politics Are Local, but as everybody right now is trying to do, we're trying to social distance. So for the next few weeks or however long this is going to be going on, I'll be working from home, but we're still going to be providing you with those essential updates, especially from Washington, D.C. And as always, we're joined by Kellie Meyer in Washington, D.C. live right now. Hey Kellie, how are you?
I'm doing well, John. It's good to see you.
Yes, you too. I'm happy we were still able to actually see each other right now.
Me too.
I think that's really just making everybody feel a little bit better
It is.
during this craziness. So,
Absolutely.
we obviously couldn't talk last week because, we were all just trying to figure out our new lives right now. And now we're starting to get a handle on all of this. So, let's just start with, the latest updates that you have from Washington for us. What's first off, I've been asked this by so many of my friends, so many people around me, just that question of when are those checks supposed to roll in from this new stimulus bill that was passed last week?
Yeah, like you said, as we were adjusting last week, Congress was still here. It feels like ages ago, but just last Monday, we had the Senate here working on the stimulus package. They got it through, and then we saw it move over to the House on Friday. The House passed the stimulus package, phase three of the coronavirus relief, and then the president signed it into law later Friday afternoon around 4 p.m. So, like you said, included in that stimulus package is going to be a $1,200 check for every American to receive. Couples will receive $2,400 plus $500 per child. The big question, like you said, is when can Americans see that in the mail? When can they see that relief? Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Sunday that Americans could expect these checks to be direct deposited into their accounts within 3 weeks. Now, people are wondering if there will be delays, if that will really happen. But as far as what the Treasury Department is saying, and Secretary Mnuchin, is that you can expect those within weeks. That's also what members of Congress had told me here last week, that you can also expect those within weeks. And like you said, that's really a question people have on their minds. They're looking for how they can get back, some of this money that they are not receiving with their being out of work, how they can support their families, how they can pay for their groceries, things like that. So this is the relief that I think many Americans are hoping for. But I think a big point about this is that every lawmaker I spoke to said this is not the end. This is not the last phase that they're going to be working on. They're already working on the next phase.
And one of the other questions too that people were bringing up is, are those stimulus checks, I should say, are they going just to anybody, or are they specifically going to those people who are out of work or who are furloughed or who, sadly lost their jobs because of all of this? Or is it just going to, if you submitted if you submitted your tax return the year before or even this year and you show that you meet certain guidelines, you're getting a check?
What I'm hearing is that individuals, Americans, will receive this check. It does depend on if you made less than 75,000. For those making more than 99,000, won't receive anything. I believe it's on 2018, 2019 tax returns. So that's one of the stipulations. As far as your question, I think that's a really important question to ask. I believe what they're saying is that every American will receive this, despite whatever situation they may be in. But that's a good question, and I think something we can definitely dig into a bit more. I'm sure there's definitely more research points and more research on this out there that I could look into for that. But overall, they're saying that it'll be every American getting this check.
And I think that's something that, like you said, it needs to be clarified because there's so many questions that are left unanswered, but mainly because we're all just trying to figure this out. You and I were trying to figure out our new lives right now, and I'm sure everybody in Washington, D.C., our elected officials are trying to figure out the appropriate response and the response that's going to be able to help as many people out there.
Right.
And speaking of helping as many people as you can, just this weekend, I believe it was yesterday, the president came out and said that the federal government is going to be extending those social distancing guidelines of, 6 feet in between people, just to be, keep yourself and others around you safe so you don't contract the virus. What is that telling us? What is that extension of those guidelines? What does that mean for all of us?
I think it means that we just haven't reached that peak yet, which is definitely fear-inducing for many. And I think it means that we won't see these businesses or restaurants opening anytime soon. Like you said, he had his 15 days to slow the spread pamphlet he had out and outreach he had out, and then basically saying, we need more time. We won't have the churches full on Easter, like he was saying, what he was hoping. And he, I saw a headline in one of the podcasts here I was listening to saying it's going to be Easter minus the peeps, which was an interesting way to put it. Just to add some lightheartedness in there, amidst this stressful time. But and I think it will extend, like you said, through the end of April. But as Dr. Fauci said, it's the virus predicts the timeline, not us. So I think that what they're looking at is health experts are looking at the timeline. They're looking at when this peak will reach and just trying to do everything they can to protect Americans. But like you said, it definitely does continue the social distancing and will impact how people can get back to work, when they can get back to work, and really just kind of still keeps our general, how we go about our lives really in flux.
It leaves a lot of questions unanswered too for all of us. And I mean, we just have to kind of wait and see, especially as you just said what Dr. Fauci said. We can't determine any of this. It's really just, like you said, the virus.
Yeah.
But, one of the other big things that was being discussed was, we had this first stimulus bill that just was, thankfully, it was passed by both chambers of Congress, and then the president signed on to the bill. But I remember hearing some different some of our elected officials saying that this was going to be one of many bills that we could anticipate seeing to either shore up the economy, to help families at home who, are, money's tight for them right now, or, just a number of different areas that need to be addressed because of an appropriate response to this virus. So what are some of those what have you been hearing really from our elected officials about what some of those other bills may address? What areas are they trying to address? What different areas of the government and society really are they trying to provide aid for? What can we expect with some new bills in the coming weeks?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think something on a lot of people's minds, because they're just saying, this is great. And of course, $2 trillion is a lot of money to inject.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about it and what people are going through, they do need more help through this. And one lawmaker I spoke to was North Carolina Congressman G.K. Butterfield. I spoke to him via Skype last Thursday or Friday even. And he said, we are having discussions with other members, having private chats about what we should do next. And what he said stood out to me was that they're looking at a phase 4 on infrastructure specifically. And that also would include rural broadband. You think of communities that don't have access, like we are right now doing an internet interview via Zoom. If kids need to continue their learning or parents need to continue their work, telehealth, things like that, and they don't have access to rural broadband. So I know that's one factor, one sidebar, looking at infrastructure issues. They are looking at, but I do think, as you know, when they craft these bills, they also include other facets. They include, okay, what did we kind of miss maybe? I know New York State, the governor there was saying that they didn't give us enough money. Look at what our state is going through. We need more. And I believe Speaker Nancy Pelosi addressed that on the Sunday show, saying we understand and we all know that this is just the beginning. This is just a part of it. So to those people listening and hearing this, at least from what I'm hearing from members of Congress, more help is on the way from this bill and then from hopefully the next one. So just kind of keep an eye out on what your lawmakers are looking at and keep in touch with your local representatives. Many of them are heading back or already back in their home districts because they won't be here. An important note is at least through April 20th, but now with these social distancing guidelines, I can't see members of Congress coming back here until May.
So then what, God forbid there needs to be some kind of emergency vote. I remember hearing this in discussion maybe about a week and a half ago, was whether or not the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, would allow for different officials to vote remotely. Is that something that was decided upon, or is the Speaker really still steadfast on having people come in to Congress physically to vote?
Yeah, and even like I said, I mentioned she was on that Sunday show. She still did that interview from inside Congress. You could tell she was inside the Russell Rotunda, one of the Capitol buildings. So I think some of those leadership members, I'm not quite sure, and I can't confirm this, but I would say that many of them may be staying in DC, like a Pelosi or a McConnell. and not, especially because with just traveling back to the state right now is so dangerous. I am hearing that some lawmakers, especially from the West Coast too, or maybe even going to Hawaii, are still here just because of travel restrictions or, just trying to be safe right now. So I think that they may still continue to work on these things from here or from wherever they are. But like you said, in terms of if they will do virtual voting, I don't know even if they've decided yet, just in terms of the constitutionality of it, can they make it happen? So it's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things that they're going to have to figure out because I think it was during the vote for the stimulus bill. I think somebody I saw on Twitter, they said, the CDC says no more than 10 people in a room, and there were 100 senators in a room, plus their staff and plus other, Senate officials in there in one chamber, which definitely didn't follow some CDC guidelines and put
Absolutely.
their health at risk. So I think
Absolutely.
it's definitely going to be something that is going to have to be discussed and decided upon,
Yeah.
especially, if we haven't gotten to that peak in that curve, that they've been talking
Absolutely. And I
about.
just got to tell you from being up there and a reporter up there, and especially a bunch of our Capitol Hill press corps colleagues up there, it just felt kind of like it was when you were up on the Hill, it was sort of like business as usual. They were so focused on passing this bill. And when I asked them if they were nervous about being there, they said, we have to be here. We have to get this done. It's not even a question. They didn't seem really worried. They were just, saying we got to get down to business and get this done. But you're right. They are surrounded by their staff. They're on the floor with their other colleagues. The press, I mean, I felt like there wasn't that social distancing, especially when you're trying to hold your microphone to them. So it definitely was a big question up there. I definitely think it's smart that they broke away for recess for the protection of everyone on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I mean, and before we go and before we go from our conversation, I wanted to ask you, what have some of our local reps been saying on the Hill in regards to, the response, either in a local level, at the federal level, from this bill, other stuff that they've been discussing, seeing coming up. What are some of our local reps saying?
Yeah, I mean, I know we were talking about one of them, especially, or just one from South Carolina, Joe Cunningham, how he actually has it. I know we were talking about that a little bit, and how he's quarantining in his home and still saying that he is doing the work for the Low Country and trying to keep in touch with his constituents via things like this or telephone calls and staying home. But to hear a member of Congress who was, you know, felt some of these symptoms and then kind of, feeling that he might have this. And you're hearing a lot of stories like that from members saying they do actually have the coronavirus, relating back to our previous conversation about how close quarters they were in there, how much close quarters they were in. But they still say they're doing that work. I think they did come to an agreement on this phase 3. They both said there were things in there that they didn't like, but they said they had to get it through. We do have some sound from Congressman Buddy Carter. He spoke on the floor on Friday, if we want to play that as well.
I've seen healthcare workers putting their own health at risk to deliver services. I've seen the best of America as well. Mr. Speaker, it is our opportunity here, our responsibility to help these people, to deliver to them. No, this is not a perfect bill. If I had an opportunity, I'd change a number of things in it, but it is what we need to do.
But I think you'll get a sense that they just wanted to get this through and get some help to the American people, and then continue, like we said, on now with phase 4.
And so, I mean, like you said, it's going to just be a lot of discussions about a bunch of different areas that they're trying to figure out how to address, because there is no prior things that they can base this off of. There is no precedent that they can base this off of. They really just have to see what is going to, and I mean, at least they have the example of other countries around the world, seeing what places like Italy and Spain, who are having, just in the middle of a crisis right now because of this virus in terms of numbers of cases and deaths and stuff like that. But they can base some ideas, see what other countries are doing. I know the president said he's talked to a number of world leaders in the last recent weeks, especially in regards to getting medical supplies and help and stuff like that for us here at home in the U.S., especially as the U.S. has the most number of cases in the world. So, I mean, I guess we're going to really just, we'll make sure to keep in touch with you in the next couple of weeks and see all the different we're hearing from our representatives on the Hill. But I cannot thank you enough, Kellie, for sitting down with us, especially during this crazy time when, there's so much that is unknown and so many crazy things that are going on that we are just, like we said, anxious, nervous, and trying to figure out. So thank you for sitting down and talking with us.
Absolutely. I love this. I love connecting with you and the people in the community. And I will say, if there is anything that they see standing out, if there is help that they see or some area that they see is not being addressed by the federal government, make sure to let your Congress member know, speak out, whatever platform you can, and let people know where you're seeing the need for help, because I think everyone in Congress we've never been through anything like this before, like you said. So we're all in this together, as many are saying, and we're all trying to figure this out together and the appropriate way to respond. And like you said, or like we saw in phase 3, there are areas that were left maybe not addressed or not enough funding. So this is the time to speak out, as they are going to continue doing these pieces of legislation to help you. Let them know what kind of help you need.
Of course. Thank you so much, Kellie. And we will make sure to stick with us at News 3 for the very latest from Washington and from your local elected officials in the next coming weeks as we all deal with this pandemic. But, I guess the most important thing to say at the end of all of this is we will get through this. This is not permanent. This is only temporary, and we will get through all of this. So make sure to stick with News 3 on air and online for the very latest. You can see more of Kellie's stories online right now at wsav.com/Washington. Thank you so much for joining us today as we're breaking down everything from Capitol Hill, as we try to do every Monday. Don't worry, we'll be on your side with all of this during this pandemic. Thank you so much for watching. I'm John Dowding. See you again next time.